Now we got a thumbs up. Okay, here we go. Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, July 15th, 2021 Norfolk Planning Board meeting. With us this evening, we have our member Gary Searle, Chris Monfort, Walter Byron, John Whittleton, our town planner, Richard McCarthy, and our administrative assistant, Betsy Vajol. And a number of you and we will introduce those in the audience who wish to speak at the time they wish to speak. Our first item on the agenda this evening is a special permit pursuing to zoning laws.
No, 14 Shire Drive.
Oh, sorry, I got it out of order. Correct, thank you for keeping me on track here. Okay, 14 Shire Drive, Island Light and Power request for a minor site plan modification for temporary installation of Transitx Monorail transportation freestanding mock-up section of pole mount system for testing. All right, will the clerk please read that?
No notice.
It's not a notice.
Not a notice?
No, it's requested insignificant minor site plan.
And so it's not a notice. All right, we don't have to have the clerk read it then. All right, gentlemen, who is here to present?
I can go first, just as an introduction. My name is Jeff Jerrier.
You need to take a microphone, sir. Not for us, but for people at home who are listening.
If you want to sit here,
Sure.
you can use this microphone.
Okay.
It's on, and I think this is connected as well. So
Okay.
either one will work.
Does that work?
As long as the little green light's on, you're all set.
It is on. Okay, good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Jeff Jerrier with Island Lighting and Power Systems. I'm the manager of operations. We are a commercial and industrial electrical contractor. We've been located in Norfolk for 25 of the 30 years that we've been in business. And we're here today for, as Richard mentioned, we filed an application for a site plan modification for an insubstantial change to an existing site plan at our property of 14 Shire Drive. We have partnered with our friends at Transitx, which is a company based in Boston, Atlanta, Georgia. And what they're looking to do is they've designed and developed a monorail type system called a podway. And my colleague Fred will talk about that in a few minutes. But what we're looking to do is construct a prototype of this particular system on our property that will be used for design and testing. So with that, I'll introduce Richard. I'll allow you talk for a minute.
Is this a people mover? Is that what it is?
That's exactly right. It's a people.
People and freight. So, so the goal is that we're replacing roadways and highways, and this is the first pilot system. We have a number of projects starting around the world, but we need something that's local that we can install and test. And so on the site, it's a short, it's about 60 feet to 30-foot spans. This is about at scale. You can see the white pod. It's just a 4-passenger electric pod that's traveling along underneath a rail, as you see.
And you want to do what? You want to install that?
Yes, there's so in pretty much every place that we go, they say, well, where is this operating? And so everyone expects you to have, and it's the chicken and the egg, because nobody wants to be first and nobody wants to be left out. So we're in this very weird, place. So if we have something where we can have dignitaries and others from other countries, because we're working with about 10 heads of state in Africa and in Asia and in Hawaii, and they want to travel and see this. So,
And what Mike's describing, what we're looking to do is just build a prototype on our property. So this is probably a, 1/3000 scale of what it would look like. And in the package that we submitted, there's renderings of what they may look like.
They're up on
Oh,
the-
there you go, exactly. Yep.
So would you just have those kind of independent, standalone things, or do you tend to wrap it around the building, or what are you going to do?
No, you're really looking at what it would be. Those are 3 columns that would be erected, and they're approximately 21 feet above grade, and then there's 3 of them, and they're connected with a 60-foot horizontal beam. And then you'll have this type of system that can travel along them.
I think the thing that will be confusing is sort of, well, how do you get up there is probably the next.
Grab the mic if you would, please. Again, not for us, but for people at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I show this, if I can kind of see here, so people board it
cool.
like you would at the ground level,
Yeah.
and then it lifts you up, and then it merges onto the main line. So
Okay.
that's the,
Yeah.
Where's the power for the horizontal movement?
the power is actually coming from the pod itself, so it's much like an electric vehicle. It has its own battery and motors, so, and it charges on, just like you would plug in an electric vehicle, except this is plugged in on our own sort of custom charging ports on the track itself.
So people can take a 60-foot ride back and forth.
Yeah, yes. It's mainly for structural, so we can, because we are manufacturing all the elements. Some of these were manufactured in Leominster, and others are being, the guideway itself is being manufactured in Pennsylvania. We're having it shipped here. But it's a very simple installation process because there's only two pieces. There's the vertical support and the horizontal.
Is it for testing as well?
Yes, and we submitted sort of a testing plan of the types of things. You know, you certainly do a lot of testing before you put any people or freight or people. So we'll probably have it where people can sit in it, and then we'll cut away, and then we'll sort of lift it up. So we'll give it the illusion that somebody's riding it, just because people don't believe it unless you actually see something moving.
So these, maybe the two end columns are where the thing can rise?
Yeah. One of those will actually be a different. We're having another one that has the vertical lift. So if you look at sort of, this is a vertical lift, and there's a channel.
Yeah.
So there's another one that's being manufactured. So we'll replace one of those poles with basically one that has this attached, and then.
Yeah.
Where are you going to keep the pods? Inside?
So yes, they have the equipment to be able to remove the pods. And also, it's light enough weight where, you know, I've moved the pod myself, so I can just carry it. It's about 60,
Do you
65
have to
pounds.
get any OSHA certification in order to put people in it? When you get to the point where you think you've lifted enough freight and demonstrated to your satisfaction that it's safe, do you have to get some OSHA approval to allow people to actually ride in it?
Well, there's a very distinction between like the public, the general public, versus just if you're doing it for own testing. So there's different regulations certainly for if it's, so we're not ever doing sort of public access.
Right.
Anybody that would be signing like a waiver form that says, you know, they're riding, you know, something that doesn't have, how you normally have like waiver forms for.
Okay.
There's notes in here about solar panels as well. Are those on the actual pods or in the railway?
Both, but what we're going to be showing here is just a small solar panel here that will then do a trickle charge to charge the pods, just so we can say that the energy
So
is
it's
coming.
power independent from the building itself.
Right. They do have the lift has a very strong motor that is like a 72 volt. So we may temporarily have. They do have a power plug. Oh, I think you have a power plug.
We do.
Near there. So it may be that we temporarily use the power plug until we get the larger battery packs for the.
Is that just a
the lift
standard
motor.
120?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does this require a building permit?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
So you've talked with the inspector about,
Yes.
We have introduced the concept, yes, with Mr. Bullock and we've introduced the concept with Mr. Bullock as well. We spoke to Mr. McCarthy too.
no objections?
No, not yet anyway.
That's actually how it got routed this way. The initial conversation with Bob needing to come to the planning board for the site plan modification. And then the second piece for them is they will be going to the zoning board of appeals next week for a special permit
Yep.
use, which will be research and development, which is allowed there by special permit.
Correct.
What about safety and risk mitigation kind of plans you have in place?
Yeah, you'll see it in the report. Basically, you know, we submitted where it shows we'll have take all the necessary precautions of so nobody's under when it's operating. We'll have burned off areas so when we do demonstrate it, there's even if the worst case happens and it falls, it's not going to injure anybody because, you know. Believe me, if something happens, then it's the entire company sort of basically falls apart at that point. So we're going to take all necessary precautions to make sure that bad things don't happen.
And we know you'll be the first guinea pig to go up there.
That's right. If Richard Branson is going up, I can go up about 20 feet in a pod. So, it's
Any questions, Rich?
I don't, is there
Okay.
any?
John, anything else?
No, I think it's good to have this type of project in an industrial park. I
I think
think
it's
it's
great,
impressive.
So is there a, if this is your beta, is there a second prototype that's longer? There's only so much you can test with 60 feet, right? This seems like it's more for show than anything else, so.
yeah,
top
it's
speed,
structural.
bad
It's all the
conditions.
structural elements because
Yeah.
even if it's 1,000 kilometers, it's still the basic things, and,
Yeah.
and each of these are independent beams. So once you actually prove out a couple of segments, yes, we're not showing like the junctions and the interchanges. We'll have the lift, but yes, there's many more complicated scenarios. So, but what our goal is that project financing is where they will we will get the financing to do the larger systems.
And will that be added on to this in any way, or?
We don't see that likely. We do have proposals for all the towns around here, from Foxborough, Gillette Stadium,
Cool.
yeah, Norfolk. I mean, we've done a proposal for just making it where you don't need a car to get around, the town, right? So that way the parents don't have to be chauffeuring their kids everywhere, and you can get rid of the school buses. All the schools can start at the same time because you don't have the constraints of the school bus scheduling. And all of our projects are privately financed, so we never ask the town or the city or the country for any guarantees or subsidies or funding. So,
What's the proposed lifespan of this system and your kind of R&D process? Anticipating that you do get financed, you're going to end up having to do those tests with the larger junctions and et cetera.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to find another location. Does that mean you're going to up and move out of Norfolk and bring this somewhere else, or are you still going to
this
keep
can
engines?
always remain. I imagine would probably be remaining for, I don't know, a couple of years. I did look at the Eiffel Tower was originally a temporary structure, so you never know. But this is pretty easily moved. But if I don't know, in the best case scenario, if when we get our next round, and we may come back and say, hey, we would like to do all around the building and stuff, and we'll have those discussions. They may get tired of us and say, no, we don't want to, or you may get tired of us and say, no, we don't want. But we'll have those discussions. It may be.
So at that existing site, how much of the land has already been developed? How much is buffer? If you did have to expand this, are there additional areas on the property that you could do so on?
You just had did you have the site plan up, or someone had?
There's a lot of parking lots, so we could go. One of the things that we always say is that we don't need any land use, because we can always just go over, because these are 75-foot span. Well, these are actually 30-foot spans, but the final one is actually 75-foot spans. So we could go. Yeah, we could go and basically not detract from any parking. And we can go into, we say we can go in anywhere. So this would be pretty easy. I mean, I've done specs in the Philippines where you have buildings that are, 10 yards apart and there's 2 lanes of traffic, and we want to put a stop go down, and we can do that. So this is like, there's plenty of room here if that was amenable. And
Yeah, sure.
Chris, you all set?
I'm good.
Gary?
Yeah, I think we were getting to the point where we were starting to redesign it with. So
Yeah.
I think we're
John,
good.
you're all set, right?
Yep.
Rich?
There's a,
Question from the audience. Mr. Quaglieri?
I think it's pretty cool. Is there enough room for a minibar?
There's different office pods. There's even toilet pods. There'll be different custom pods for all sorts of.
Video you could show us?
Sure, you can. Can you put up a web browser? Is there a?
we can, yes.
There's a
Yeah, I know.
2-minute video if you want.
We really have a lot on our agenda, Al.
Hey, David will pass. You can go to transitx.com. There's a 6-minute video and there's a 2-minute video. So if you want to see a lot more, you can. And if you go to /W, we've done 2,500 proposals for all cities around the world. So you can.
What's the weight limit for these things?
It's 1 ton of freight and about 1,000 pounds.
That's almost it.
Yeah, no, it's,
All right, I think we need a motion, first of all, to accept this as a minor modification to the site plan. And once we get that motion passed, then we need a motion to actually approve the minor modification.
Make a
So,
motion to regard this monorail transport system as a minor modification to the site plan for Island Light and Power.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. So,
Aye.
we need a roll call vote here. Mr. Searle?
Aye.
Mr. Montfort?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Whittleton is aye, before I get his name out, and the chair votes aye as well. All right, now we need a vote to approve the minor modification. So,
Motion to approve the minor modification for Island Light and Power Company to install a Transitx monorail transportation system at their site.
do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Searle?
Aye.
Mr. Montfort?
Aye.
Mr. Whittleton?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So, good luck, gentlemen.
great. I think the next is the ZBA next.
Yeah, next Wednesday evening.
And I think Al may want to put one in his development, so you better see him on the way out.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Right out of town.
We also have the private that can give you door access to an apartment building, so that way you don't have to use elevators anymore, and you can basically take a pod directly to your balcony.
Nice.
Get your
Very good.
Oh.
You need to take your props.
Thank you very much.
All right,
All right, thank you.
Objections are coming true.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. All right, next is Seven Hill, right?
Yeah, 7 Hill Street,
Okay.
yes.
All right, next item is 7 Hill Street, special permit pursuant to zoning bylaw, section H3, affordable housing development. Now, here, I think we have one that we need to read into the record. Is that not correct?
Do, yes.
We do, yes. All right, so,
So
Chris,
notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass GL Section 40A and the Norfolk zoning bylaws, Section H3. A public hearing will be held on Thursday, July 15th, 2021 at 7:15 in room 124 at Norfolk Town Hall, 1 Liberty Lane, Norfolk, Mass, relative to a special permit application for property located at 7 Hill Street in Norfolk, Mass. The applicant, 29 Valley Street Realty Trust of Walpole, Mass, is requesting a special permit in order to comply with the Town of Norfolk zoning bylaws, Section H.3, affordable housing development. The property is located in the C1D off-highway zoning district, reference Assessors Map 26, Block 80, Lot 8. The application and plans are available for public inspection on the Town of Norfolk website or in the office of the Norfolk Planning Board during the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Thursday.
thank you, Chris. Okay, Mr. Quaglieri.
Good evening. Attorney Louis Cacavero for Mr. Quaglieri.
Hi, Lou.
So I see a couple of new faces since we were here for this original special permit. So I thought maybe I'd take a couple of minutes and just kind of review the chronology and why we're here, and I'll certainly be brief. We applied for, and over the course of 3 public hearings, presented to you plans to do a development at 7 Hill Street in 2018. At the time we applied, H3, as I understand it, the zoning provision in question tonight, was literally on the table, but not yet in your zoning code, or at least that's what I'm led to understand from your town council. So, needless to say, none of us, either the development team or the town, was fully appreciative of what needed to be done with regard to an H3 permit at the time. So, we had 3 public hearings in April, May, and in June of 2018, and great detail about the project was discussed. A number of changes were made to satisfy both the board and some abutters. And over the course of those 3 hearings, the question of the number of affordable units that were going to be required for this project was really never raised. I've actually watched the YouTubes that you have posted on your website, and there was only one mention over the course of 3 meetings about affordable units. And it was actually Mr. Whittleton. He interjected at one point during, I think it was the May meeting, and he asked Mr. Quaglieri, you're aware that you're going to need to dedicate 1 unit here for affordability? And we answered yes. Of course, we understood. We understood that that provision was going to become part of your bylaw, was going to become part of your code, and we understood that that was going to be a requirement imposed on us. So we proceeded. In June of 2018, a draft decision was shared with the development team by Mr. McCarthy, and we reviewed it very carefully. We were very happy with its content. And note that draft decision didn't have any language in it about the need for affordable units to be dedicated, any procedures to be followed. And frankly, we understood that, our requirement to go with the H3 code provision was subsumed within the application that we had pending before you. So the decision was voted on. I think it was June 27th. We received it in the mail, we recorded it, and everybody went about their business. It wasn't until COVID hit, it wasn't until we realized that there was a need for some delays that would occasion our need to postpone commencement of the project, that we made application to this board for an extension. The question of affordable units was never raised. We made a second request for an extension. The number of units or the question of affordable units was never raised. We actually came in with a minor modification request. The number of affordable units or the need to comply with H3 was never raised. And frankly, none of us, anybody on the development team or anybody in the town hall, understood or appreciated that a second distinct special permit was probably required here. So suffice to say, we're the guinea pig. We're probably the first project in town that became subject to the provisions of this particular code provision. So when we realized, when we put this property under agreement earlier this year, that we did not have that special permit in hand, we immediately made application for it. That's when things became a bit complicated. You had before the town, in your annual town meeting in May, 2 additional provisions that would amend the H3 requirements. So I guess the legal question that's before us tonight, and those provisions, by the way, were passed. The legal question that's presented for us tonight is what law applies. Does the provisions of H3 that were in place in 2018 apply? In which case, we would be required to dedicate 1 unit of these 18 to affordability. Or do the provisions of H3 as amended by either or both of these town meeting warrant articles apply, in which case a different number may be in play. We've researched the question. We've talked with your town council informally. We've thoroughly researched the question again and talked with your town council again. And frankly, folks, there's no case law on this. When a developer files for a special permit, generally speaking, the zoning freeze applies. The zoning freeze is a long-standing provision of the zoning code in Chapter 40A that basically says a developer is protected at the time he files an application for a permit, so that his planning, his permitting, and his building is going to be subject to the law that's in place at the time he makes application. The zoning freeze makes perfect sense. When you design a project, you want to know what the rules of the game are. When you go about permitting a project, you want to know what the rules of the game are. When you start building a project, you want to know what the rules of the game are. You don't want the rules of the game changed at any point during the process. The law understands and appreciates that. The law understands and protects developers in that regard by freezing what zoning provisions apply to us at the time you apply for a permit. So, we don't have any case law to support our position. I respectfully disagree with your town council's citations. The cases that he's shared with you that suggest otherwise are not the case. None of those cases deal with a scenario such as ours, where 2 permits were required, and one was applied for and received, and the other one was held in abeyance for a period of time. The cases he cite have to do with situations where the town tried to zone out uses during the pendency of a permitting process. And frankly, they don't apply. So we have to look at the clear language of the statute. We have to look at the intent of the statute. And we respectfully suggest that the intent of the statute here is to protect the developer. When we designed this project, we designed it knowing that we were going to have to dedicate 1 unit to affordability. the project becomes financially suspect if we have to dedicate more than one unit. We have to look at the special permit that you granted us in 2018. Does that language protect us? And we respectfully suggest that it does. It suggested to us that we needed to apply for an H3 permit under the code that was in place at the time. We've acted in good faith throughout. Your consulting engineers at Beta have never said to us anything other than one unit needs to be dedicated to affordable. Your town planner, and I say this with all due respect to his position, has always sort of assumed that one unit would need to be dedicated to affordability. And we've proceeded accordingly. The draft decision we got actually never made mention of affordability. So we were somewhat surprised when this scenario presented itself. This is a good project. This is a project that was approved after lengthy discussion with abutters, after lengthy hearings with your board. A number of changes were made to satiate everybody's concerns. This is a project that will put 18 units into the housing stock and into the housing stream that will generate considerable tax revenue. And we've got a purchase and sale agreement that says that we are obliged to transfer a project fully permitted. There's a requirement attended to it that only one unit needs to be dedicated to affordability. If there's a decision otherwise, our purchase and sale agreement is probably nullified. And we seriously need to reconsider whether or not this project has financial feasibility. And we have to go back to the drawing board and look at what allowable uses are, commercial or otherwise, in this district. And we'd prefer not to do that. We'd prefer to sell the project to the builder who's prepared to build it in accordance with the permits that were granted in 2018. Thank you.
Well, as much as I might personally empathize with your position, when I read on council's file here, I have no really option but to conclude that I must enforce the current H3 law and bylaw, excuse me, and require 2 affordable units. That's what it says here, and that's the position I have to take.
That's his opinion. You're certainly entitled to adopt his position, but I respectfully disagree with it. And I
ask a
respectfully
question?
suggest the case law he cites is inapplicable.
All right, questions from the board?
Because your scenario is what's fair.
Yeah.
And that's why by getting this letter this afternoon, I was shocked. So the one thing that you and the town council are in disagreement with is that he's saying that a special permit in process with a zoning change loses its freeze. I know in a subdivision it does not, in a lot of, but, so that's what he said, so that was kind of, so that's in conflict with you just said, is that correct, Lou?
I think it is.
Okay.
It's a deeper analysis than that, but I think that's in conflict.
And the other thing that's confusing to me, as I mentioned to our planner, this was one project done on a special permit. And the stormwater permit and the affordable permit are all tied into this project. So I find it bizarre that this project can actually be approved and followed through with 2 separate sets of bylaws. I was always under the assumption that the special permit to do the project was governing, and that this thing after the fact wasn't relative because the project was already done. But I guess that's something we're going to have to find out with town council about that thing being freezed or not. And the other question I have for Rich, in 2018, when this project was done, section H3, did that have the language that a special permit is needed 90 days after the appeal period? Was that in our bylaws right then?
No, it wasn't. Just to clarify the record. So H3 was in effect the bylaw. However, at that time in 18, what was going before town meeting was to establish a timeline. There was no time frame for which.
So what did H3 exactly say then in 2018?
So in 18, it was silent.
Silent about what? Affordable, needing to file a special permit, or what?
When to file a special permit, to
It
seek
was-
the special permit.
So in there,
What the town amended in May
Right.
of 18 was to say that either simultaneously with a project, file for the special permit, or 90 days after
get it.
approval.
so
Right.
it makes it more convoluted, because if there was no time designation on the initial filing, he could file it anytime he wanted. And we had Norway Farms that filed well over a year or so after the project, right? And that was okay. So I guess it still boils down to, which special permit is really the overriding one, and number two, can special permit froze? Since you've
So
never
that's
filed
essentially
for-
my position, John. I don't mean to interrupt you, but, taking these pieces and think through them and analyze them in my head. The special permit that approved the project was the important one. It talked about design, location of access and egress.
And requirements.
And requirements and the like. H3 at the time was silent as to what the requirements are in terms of applying. It was later amended to say either simultaneously with the special permit that we received or within a certain period of time thereafter. When we applied for this permit, how come we didn't get an H3 permit in addition to the special permit that we received? I guess is one of my threshold questions. And how come we got a draft decision that made no mention of the need to go for a second distinct special permit under H3?
Since there was no timing requirement for that special, it did say special permit, correct, Rich?
It is, yeah. it did
Since there
say-
was no timing for that, does the new bylaw changing the number of units actually override that? Since he's still under the bylaw that he had in place when he filed, since there was no time limit, does that mean that bylaw is still good for this applicant who already had the project done? I guess that would be one of my...
That's another way to go. We can
That would
treat
be one
tonight
of-
as a
one of my
request to
questions.
augment the existing special permit. We can treat tonight as a request to go back in time to 2018, apply the law in place at the time, and give us the H3 permit that we should have received in 2018.
The other question I had, just on the board, every one of these we've had, and there weren't many, the number of units is always determined at the site plan. The special permit is simply for the method of payment. Which unit is going to be? Do you want to build the unit right off the site? Do you want to give us cash in lieu? In all the past, we have never determined the number of units at that special permit. To me, that was a filing of how do you want to pay us? Not how much do you have to pay us, but how, because the units were established. And I thought that I had mentioned more than once at that permit about the one unit. I mean, I thought that was kind of clear. I'm surprised I only said it once.
You only said it once, and I've watched the YouTubes three times, so...
Yeah, but these are the things that really, if we're going by what town council says, then it makes this process to me, it makes it very unfair. When you
Well,
develop something, you have your
yeah,
specs,
yeah,
you have your budget, you consider all the costs, and you do it accordingly. Now, perhaps if he knew at the time he needed 3 units, he would have definitely cut things out of the project, because you're building 2 units for less than cost. So that what makes it more, to me, inherently unfair. So the questions that remain, I guess, are mostly legal, because what town council has said, right, if we approve a special permit, it has no bearing. It's illegal. That's what he said.
Well, I'm not sure he said that. I think what he
pretty
said
much.
is H3 in its current form applies, and we disagree, and we'd
No, he said
we'd
something
rather
more
not litigate it.
He
We'd
said something more specific, the letter.
Well, the other thing, the other thing is, we don't have town council here this evening, which would have helped, because you could debate back and forth with him relative to the interpretation of the law here. Have you found what you're looking for?
Do we have any idea how many other instances of this we might come across as well with other developers? Or is this the
This
sole
is
one?
all, you mean as far as the application of the bylaw?
Yeah, additional developers who were going by the previous permits, and now we've got this bylaw change.
This is kind of groundbreaking for us in
Yeah, I
terms of
don't
that.
know that
yeah.
there's any.
We've only had
Yeah.
2 other projects that have been subject to this bylaw.
And this
Well,
is
the old
novel in the
bylaw,
law,
sorry.
too.
Right,
You know, I try to emphasize that in my presentation, that there is no case law that addresses this scenario.
Yep.
And we don't want to go make case law. We want to build units.
Right.
We want to build good units. This developer is a known quantity in town. He builds a really nice product. We want to get him in the housing stock, the housing stream, and start paying real estate taxes.
Right. I believe one of the meetings in question, he mentioned that if the bylaw went through at that current ratio, it would be unprofitable as well, so.
And it is. I mean, you know, you can only do so much on a plot of land, and we've done aesthetically the best we can to make it profitable, and that's a delicate balance. And that's my point. The zoning freeze cases, if you read them, and they go back a long time, it's a constitutional thing, frankly. They all say that the developer needs to be protected when he designs a project, when he starts his permitting process, and when he starts shoveling the ground. The code has to remain the same for him. The town has every right to go change its zoning code, its building code. But you can't make changes after the fact and apply them retroactively to builders, because it's such a delicate balance when these things are designed and permitted and built.
I'd be hard pressed, though, that there's no statute of limitations on that. I mean, majority of locations don't allow a permit.
Correct. So the zoning freeze cases all say that as long as you're within your permit rights time-wise, you're protected. So if the permit says you've got 2 years to build, then you're protected for 2 years. If the permit was extended, as it was here a couple of times, you're protected. Once your permit lapses, you're subject to the zoning code as it exists at that time.
And how long was our most recent extension?
So this was permitted in 18. It was extended
2 times,
2 times, in 19 and 20,
and then the modification most recently.
and then the COVID stay. So there were executive orders by the governor that stayed all permits. So
That
you're
brings us
familiar
to
with that.
when?
That brings us till now.
And now, okay.
So we're within our permit rights still.
It says, Lou, that the bylaw now prohibits the proposed use. The planning board would be without authority to issue a special permit. Accordingly, there is no value to remanding the matter.
So that case that he cites is a case where a developer filed an application for a permit. He was denied. He appealed to the land court, I think it was. And during that litigation, the town hurried up and passed a zoning change that zoned out what this developer wanted to do. It prohibited the use that he wanted to make of his property. And that's what the court said. The court said now that's entirely different than a developer that needs 2 permits. He gets one, and he's waiting to get the other one, and there's a law change on the requirements
We
with
actually
regard
had
to
the
the second.
incidents on Main Street where Boyd's Crossing is. The zoning was changed during the middle of a special permit for PMLD, and at that meeting, I remember, I was on the board, I think Walter was also, the permit was considered invalid because the bylaw had changed. But in that case, the special permit was in fact the project. It wasn't a part of the main project. That was the whole project, just like the special permit for this project was establishing the 18 units on that parcel of land. That was the main special permit, right? And that was passed. That's why this is convoluted, because this is like superfluous to the main actions of the case.
The date you guys give us a permit is the operative date. So once that permit's in hand, we're protected from zoning changes as long as that permit is still valid. And the argument I'm trying to make here is that all of the zoning code that was in place at the time we got our permit should apply to us.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we're not in a position this evening to grant your request. Based on the letter, let me have that letter. Based on this letter we got from our town council. Thanks, John. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't go back and question the town council on the basis of your argument, which I will see that we do. That doesn't mean he will change his position, and therefore we may not be able to change our position, but we will at least have the discussion.
Does it make sense for Lou to talk with town council directly? and see
Well,
if
it
they can
does, but I
get
think we need to have our discussion with him first
Okay.
and give us a chance to, I mean, you've already talked with him 2 or 3
So I-
times already.
When this first reared its ugly head, I had a very informal, Richard was very kind to give me his name and number. I know that firm well. I know Mr. DeLuca very well. I've had dozens of matters with him. And they're a very reputable office, and I respect them and their opinion. But I'm going to disagree with Mr. Mello, and I'm going to ask that maybe, an attorney of higher authority become involved to see if, I can convince them to change their legal opinion. Because if you're going to rely on it, I need to change their opinion.
Yeah, I understand. Well, you're certainly willing to make that request of him, whether he'll agree or the firm will agree, I don't know. But we'll have a discussion with Mr. Mello, and we'll get back to you. And if you wish to have a face-to-face discussion with the board and Mr. Mello present, we can arrange for that as well.
Okay, that's probably what we would want. Just excuse me for a moment.
Yeah.
Entitlement to other freeze protection.
Can I-
That's what I've been arguing, yeah.
No
So-
wonder that there's an avenue here. He says his opinion, but otherwise, if you present something,
Well, I guess I need an opportunity to discuss with Mr. Mello, so perhaps I can get a nod from you that you've had your discussion with him first and given him permission to talk with me. He was very guarded when I spoke with him last.
Yeah, sure. Well,
So-
Yeah, I think it was all, well, essentially it was all speculative in terms of, there was no town meeting, it hadn't voted and so forth, but,
But he was fearful of breaching a client confidence, so
Yeah,
if
yeah.
if you give him permission to speak with me, that would be helpful.
yeah, well, again, we'll have our discussion with him first, and then we'll give him the green light
I
to
think
talk with
that's,
you.
the board can request that,
Yeah, yeah.
to do that.
That's fair. We can give you access to him.
Okay.
And I think it would be useful if we were all present, however, so that we can all hear the same arguments back and forth across the table.
Well, you speak with them first. I'll speak with them next to
All
try
right.
to streamline our presentation.
Yep.
So that we don't hit you with a bunch of law books over the head. And
I'll wear my helmet.
Walter, I have a question. Is there any scenario where the board sees fit to give this permit if town council doesn't assent to it? It seems to me that you're relying on this. I believe this is a pretty weak document. It was just produced an hour beforehand. So is there any avenue, if this position doesn't change, where this board would consider my attorney's professional opinion
I would,
on a zoning freeze?
I like Lou's idea of, where this is such an important matter, I'd like it stepped up the chain in town council's office to someone that specializes in zoning, that can really look at this.
The answer to that is, I don't know. I'm reluctant to buck our town council. That's what we pay him for, pay the firm for. We rely on their findings in many cases, and at the moment, I can't see any scenario where the board would say, wait a minute, forget that, we're going to give you the permit anyway. It opens us up to criticism and maybe even litigation, so.
Walter, we also have the option to bring in an outside specialist, someone like Mark Bobrowski, who goes to court every day on bylaw matters. He wrote most of them. And I wish the applicant would probably have to pay for the service for that, but this guy is independent. You know him, Lou. In zoning, he's the godfather of zoning, and I think if he gave us something, we could rely on that. All the courts do, so just another option, that's
Yeah,
all.
okay, well, something to think about. All right, step one, we'll talk to
Okay.
Peter and let you know that we've had that conversation.
Okay. All righty,
Best I can do tonight.
all right.
Did you want to open up to the public tonight, or wait until next meeting?
If the public wishes to comment or ask a question, they may do so. Sir, you must use the microphone, however. Make sure your little green light's on.
Yep, it is, I checked.
It is, okay, good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name is Steve Rosenthal. I live at 31 Valley Street. There are several other residents of the condominiums along Valley Street who are here tonight. Our comments or our concerns are somewhat tangential to the subject of the application, but we wanted to bring the board's attention to changes in circumstances in that neighborhood, which may impact on its position regarding the project that was previously approved. It's my understanding that the initial special permit was provided in, I think it was like June of 2018. At that time, the abutters along Valley Street were the applicants. They were building two sets of 4 condominium units apiece. And now they are all occupied by other people. All the units have been sold. At the time, and I respectfully want to take issue with something the applicant's attorney said. He said there were extensive discussions with the abutters. Well, none of us were there at the time. The abutters were the applicants. But what I want to bring to the board's attention is that we have basically 3 concerns. We have a privacy concern, a safety concern, and a health concern that we want to bring to the board's attention, and we ask that they take it into consideration since the circumstances in the neighborhood have changed. If you take a look at the plan that's up there, okay, let's deal with the privacy issue first, okay? If you look at the far right borderline, at the time, that line, and still does, borders with neighbors on Hill Street.
Hill Street, yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
And you'll notice that the vegetation that's there is basically edge to edge, forming almost a hedgerow. Whereas the vegetation along the line that borders the 2 sets of condominiums on Valley Street are, if you go by the scale on that plan, anywhere from 4 to 6 feet apart. Okay? So there's a privacy issue because people are going to be looking out their backyards.
No, sir, we shouldn't even be getting into this. This discussion is not about the project that happened. This is not on our agenda, which technically we shouldn't be even listening to you. This is simply about the law as regard to the affordable housing. So try to go recreate the project that was approved 2 years ago really isn't part of this meeting. And really, it's not really allowed under open meeting law.
Well, Your Honor, excuse me.
I'm not an honor.
Force of habit, excuse me. If you look at conditions of approval number 8, site plan approval is subject to all subsequent conditions imposed by the various boards and commissions. And I would suggest that this board could take into account some of the concerns that we have
That's
to
not
impose
do-
additional conditions.
That's not to do with the nuts and bolts of the project. That's for something like noise or dust or something that's environmentally displeasing to the residents. That's nothing to do with the bones of the project. The project was approved. So now if they interrupt that by doing something during construction, that's where that comes in, and the neighbors have say. But right now, at this point, they don't, so.
I just want to point out the current neighbors had no say at the
Well,
time.
But they weren't there, as you
They
said.
weren't there.
They weren't there.
Right.
The discussions were strictly in-house at the time.
Well, you know, projects approved with people coming in from 10 years ago, same thing. It's done. We're trying to move forward and get this resolved, and it's to the point that you're a little bit late on this.
Fair enough, although these the project or the nature of the project and the conditions attached to it weren't disclosed to the buyers when they bought the
Let me
units.
suggest an avenue that might
Sure.
offer you a chance to air your grievances and possibly come to some resolution.
Yes.
The gentleman who owns the project is sitting right there.
Oh, I know, and I had a conversation with Bob Vey just yesterday on the site, and it was a friendly conversation. We're not trying to
Sure it
get
is.
in their way.
Sure it is. I'm just saying, it's possible that if you make your case and the developer of the project listens to you and you say, that makes sense, I'll accommodate you. Maybe he won't, I don't know, but there's the guy, and you ought to have that conversation with him, because we can't, as Joan said, we can't do much for you right now.
Okay. Well, with the board's permission, I will at least direct some of these concerns to the town planner. Perhaps he
That's
can take a
fine.
look at it.
That's fine, sure, that's fine.
All right. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Betsy? You want Valley Street renamed to Whitney Place again? No, okay.
Okay. Elizabeth Whitney, 26 Valley Street, Pondville. I was thinking in terms of the Pondville pod that we could see flying up and down the street. I just want to make the point that since 2013, when the bylaw was changed, giving residential by special permit a real possibility, I have seen the most beautiful neighborhood develop because of the condominiums to Quagliari built. Everybody knows that Quagliari and I, many years ago, were like oil and water. We didn't see eye to eye. I was terrified that my beautiful neighborhood would be ruined. And I just have to say this. He came to the house one day and he said, I really want to get along with you. I really want to do the right thing. I know how passionate you are about Pondville. I wrote a book about Pondville. I love Pondville. I've been here almost 40 years. And when Al started building his beautiful condos, and then he followed that by building more beautiful condos across the street, I was out taking, remember you saw me in the woods, Al? I said, I'm taking pictures everywhere of everything. And they're beautiful, and I've been in many of them. I'm proud of them. I have taken pictures and had them enlarged and shown them to friends. We have a really beautiful residential neighborhood that was first settled by Jacob Pond in 1730. Much has changed, much has progressed. I have come down Hill Street, looked in the backyards of the condominiums that I believe Mr. Rosenthal referred to. I thought, oh, I wonder, well, so what? It's beautiful. The Pondville Medical Center was a giant in our neighborhood, and we were all nervous about the lighting and the people are gonna see us and they're gonna look out their windows. I thought, so what? Life is beautiful on Valley Street, Hill Street, and Old Pond Road, and I support decisions that my friend, and I believe an excellent developer, and Lou, you probably remembered when Al and I were not the best of friends. And I speak and say what I'm saying from my own heart.
Well, I think,
Anyway,
thank
you.
Oh, you're welcome. But I think that that's testimony to the fact that it's possible that a dialogue between the two of you can make some progress. Because it did, certainly with these two folks.
And talk is good, but people do have commitments and people do have beliefs. And I just wanted to end by saying that town council reached, and the key word to me as a school teacher is opinion. Doesn't mean it's cut in stone, it's opinion. And the town council's opinion was that, to which Mr. Quagliari and Carcavaro disagree. It's an opinion. So yes, more talking, more dialoguing, and thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. All right. With that, we're going to move on, I believe.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to?
Motion to continue.
Well, yeah, we need a motion to continue this public hearing. That's right. Thank you.
So
Chris.
moved.
Do we have a second?
August 17th at
August
7
17th at
August 17th at
7 p.m. Sure, yeah.
Second.
See you then.
And, all right, we have a second by Ms. Montfort. All those in favor, Mr. Searle.
Aye.
Mr. Montfort.
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. See you on the 17th
Thank
of
you.
August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda is 228 Dedham Street, site plan special permit, stormwater management permit application, and let's see, is this one we need to read into
You
the?
need to read it, first hearing?
Notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass GL Section 40A and the Norfolk zoning bylaws, Section F.11. A public hearing will be held on Thursday, July 15th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. in room 124 at the Norfolk Town Hall, 1 Liberty Lane, Norfolk, Mass. Relative to a special permit application for property located at 228 Dedham Street in Norfolk, Mass. The applicant, Leanbury Corp. Of Norfolk, Mass. is proposing the expansion of the existing commercial building, construction of an aggregate storage building, and 3 additional material storage buildings with additional parking and utility connections. The applicant is also requesting a stormwater management permit and special permits for parking space reduction, building height exceeding 40 feet, outdoor storage exceeding 1,000 square feet, and a sign exceeding 12 square feet for multiple businesses. The property is located in the C1B on-highway and off-highway zoning district. Reference Assessors Map 19, Block 69, Lot 25. The application and plans are available for public inspection on the Town of Norfolk website or in the office of the Norfolk Planning Board during the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Thursday.
Thank you, Chris. All right, now, we've received a request for continuance, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we need a motion to continue this until August 17th at
7:15.
7:15 p.m.
moved. So
So
moved.
moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the continuance, Mr. Searle.
Aye.
Mr. Montfort.
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, so we've got that. Next up is Noon Hill Acres Redwood Circle, discussion of consideration of rescinding vote to pull the bond. Sir.
Well, I'm very happy to report to the planning board since the last meeting. Much work has been done, to the point that the road was, top coat was put on yesterday. It looks really good out there. All the curbing's been done. The last remaining piece to complete the subdivision is to put in the landscaping, the street trees and the plantings within the cul-de-sac. If you recall, back in beginning of June, at least the previous vote was to pull the bond except for the deadline was June 30th,
Yeah,
except for landscaping because of
Right.
the time of year.
right.
And like I just mentioned, since that time, all that work has been done. It's been fantastic, because it's been done at a high quality. So recommendation to the board would be to rescind
Rescind the vote, pull the bond, yeah.
the bond.
Now, there was discussion that some of the slope granite got displaced by a truck running over it.
And that was repaired.
That was repaired without,
Repaired.
okay.
Yeah,
all right.
so that was all taken. So,
Okay.
like I said, the only thing left is the plants. The landscape will have to come back and top dress, look between the back of curb and the sidewalk.
Yeah,
In the beginning, at the front end of the development, but up against where everybody's lawn area
Yeah.
and the sidewalk looks pretty good.
okay.
Um,
And all the grates were raised, everything was
yeah,
done?
everything.
Was done
everything.
properly, okay.
And it was under the supervision of DPW, and I did my periodic pop-in inspection,
Right.
well, not inspections, but
Okay,
let's call them observations, but
sure.
everything went quite well. So I think the residents are happy. I know I'm certainly happy to see all the progress that's been made.
Good, all right, thank you, Rich. Questions from board members?
No.
I'm curious if we have any residents here for that.
No.
Okay, they've
No.
been previously very vocal, so.
Yeah, no, we've been communicating back and forth via email, and
Absence means they gotta be happy, right?
Yeah, right, right.
All right.
Sure.
Yeah. No, they have been, so.
Yeah, they sent a few emails as well saying that they
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
pleased with
so-
the
All right,
progress.
so Chair will entertain a motion to rescind the vote taken at the last meeting to pull the bond.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Montfort,
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton. Chair votes aye. Okay, so we've rescinded that vote, and I think all we have to do now is monitor the landscaping installation this fall, once
Yes.
it either stops being 90 degrees or stops raining, one or the other, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
one or the other. And after that, I'll just have to, and after that, you just have to, prepare the as-built plans, we'll get the deeds, and then I would think,
Yeah.
acceptance should be in line for the spring of next year,
Right. And,
2022.
all right, who's going to generate the as-built?
Their surveyor will do
And
that.
he's
Mr. Dalzell.
He's got one lined up?
I'm presuming he does. I'll have to look back and see who did that plan.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
might have to hire somebody new.
Yeah,
Kind of feel like that was a surveyor
Yeah,
that's
I think
retired.
GLM did that, I think.
Oh, GLM did
think
that?
so, yeah.
Oh, all right, so then, that's fine then.
okay, all right. Anything else on Redwood Circle? Nope, all right. Next item is Fern Ridge Estates, request for bond reduction. We have received a letter from Mr. Petrosi, who's sitting in the audience, along with a set of as-built plans. We have referred the as-built plans to our engineering company, Beta, for review, and we await their response.
Well, actually, technically, I asked you to refer it, but
Say again?
I'm asking you as the board to refer it to
And,
DPW. And
Fair enough, and the board, I believe, agree with you. Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Montfort,
Aye.
Mr. Whittleton?
Yep.
Chair votes to say yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, refer it to Beta. And once we get the Beta report, then we can act on Mr. Petrosi's list.
How are you, Lou?
Yeah, no COVID, no, but,
Although sitting at home on Zoom is much more convenient. I'll see you later.
yeah, it is.
I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
So I look
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Design Review Board appointment. Appoint Mr. Bob Nicodemus. His term expires, or expired, I guess, on June 30th.
and he is interested in.
Wishes to renew that for a 3-year, no, for a,
Yep,
yeah, 3-year period, yeah, 3-year
three-year
period.
term.
Okay, so we need a motion to appoint Mr. Bob Nicodemus to the Design Review Board.
Motion to approve Bob Nicodemus to Design Review Board to a term expire 6/30/2024.
Second? Do we have, second from Mr. Searle? I think it was Mr. Montfort, okay. All those in favor, Mr. Searle,
Approved, yes.
Mr. Montfort,
Aye.
and Mr. Weddleton?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. I'm glad Bob has still got his finger in the pot.
He
'cause
does.
Good man. Okay, next item on the agenda is associate member appointment. Now, we are in the unique and the favored position of having 2 candidates who have come forward. We have interviewed them. We've received their paperwork. We've reviewed all of that. We had a month to, actually, in one case, 2 months to ruminate on this, and it's time, I believe, to vote. So I propose that we vote by just saying my choice is Mr. Sullivan, or my choice is Mr. Hunter, and see how it comes out. So with that said, let me start with my right, with Mr. Searle.
Both excellent candidates, but I vote for Mr. Hunter.
You vote Mr. Hunter, okay? Mr. Montfort.
I agree, both excellent. My concern was around tenure and just building a relationship with the members of the town, so Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan, okay. Mr. Weddleton?
Mr. Sullivan?
Mr. Sullivan. Well, Chair votes for Mr. Sullivan as well, and who knows, you may be back next year if the big red bus runs over him, you never know. We might need a,
I hope you are back. Absolutely.
scenarios that could happen.
Lottery?
okay.
We're not voting on your demise, only your appointment. So it's,
We will forward your name to the Select Board because it is a joint appointment, and it's usually,
Yeah, they do it.
I don't know, I've been on the board for 9 years now and never heard anybody rejected when we send the name up there, so most likely it'll be approved.
So probably just tune that or consolidate it into a vote. You just kind of, a little bit loose. Yeah, make it official.
It was an
vote.
official vote.
Wow.
I declare
Yeah.
it an official vote.
And no
It was a little bit
nomenclature.
loose.
Do the admin person a favor, make an official vote.
And in what form would you like that language to be
We'll have somebody
expressed?
motion to.
You make a motion to, all right,
a motion
okay.
to, and then second. And
All right, well, Chair will entertain a motion to take a vote on the associate member.
Motion to approve Brian Sullivan as associate member for a term of 1 year.
Yeah, his name is Gary.
It's Gary, but
Gary, sorry.
That's his cousin, Brian, is Brian.
We know each other well.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to appoint Mr. Sullivan as our associate member for a period of 1 year. Mr. Searle.
aye.
Aye.
Mr. Montfort, aye. Mr. Weddleton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Congratulations, and the initiation will take place later.
Volunteer people, so. Absolutely.
The town runs on volunteers, as you know, many committees and boards.
All of us.
The pay
We're
is
all
amazing.
volunteers here.
the Board of Appeals is empty. Well,
As I said before, honestly, my interest is to get more instant knowledge of the process. Because I feel like when I went in front of the board the first time, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
And I think serving will just help me better
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, two.
Absolutely.
And also, it provides civic duty, so it's not a win-win.
So the zoning board of appeals actually has 2 associate member positions open, if you're interested.
I'll work on the paperwork.
Great.
Yeah.
I still have yours. I can always forward it.
Yeah, they probably want you to
Oh,
just
they want
revise
me-
your
Okay.
application for associate member, but
Great.
yeah, there are 2 openings there, so.
And thank you for volunteering.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you both.
Okay, next item on the agenda is meeting minutes, review and approve 6/8/21 meeting minutes, and
Motion to review and approve the 6/18/21 minutes from our last planning board meeting.
do we have a second?
Second?
And all in favor, Mr. Searle?
Aye.
Mr. Montfort?
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next item, Toils End Farm, Fox Run subdivision, update on the drain line repairs and the letter describing our negotiation. Can you put that up there, Betsy?
I can. Which, Rich, you had a,
This should be the one that came hot off the press at July 15th.
Sounds like we're pretty close, though.
Yeah.
I believe we are there.
this one?
Back and forth and
I've
back and
seen,
forth,
yeah.
Hold on.
I believe we've arrived at a conclusion.
And
Right.
I'm hopeful that the man in the blue shirt down there will agree.
Well, he's hoping you guys agree, actually, because I think he,
I'm in hopes that this young lady here will speak for me.
Because we all listen.
Is the one you want up there, Rich, or did you want the red line one?
actually mine, I put her, but that's the same letter.
Yours has the strike through,
No,
or the one in the packet
that
does?
one's good.
I think you sent multiple versions of it, I believe.
Right, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put your, so what, back and forth between Brian Lupin and John Engdahl, both on the final letter. So what I took was the letter that Brian had made the final edits on, and just put on planning board letterhead, which is today, which the last item that was to be closed out was the video of the old lining
Yep, yep,
of the in situ.
yep.
which was agreed upon.
Yep.
Which is in there. The only thing the only subsequent approval would be the bond language, which was draft. We need to have that reviewed by council and the board to take a look at it. I know DPW looked at it initially.
Yeah.
But that's not critical for tonight.
No.
Because that would be a replacement bond.
Yeah.
But that'd be a subsequent action.
Indeed, yeah.
But everything else, hopefully is in there in terms of,
All right, I tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like
you
to,
want to go through it?
I'd like
Or?
to go through it line by line and make sure that all the members of the board have read it, understand it, and have no
Sure.
issues with it.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've read it about 100 times, but I'm going to read it again.
Should we do
I-
it out loud for the benefit of the audience?
I think it's on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay,
if-
on the cable as well?
Yeah, the
Okay.
cable, yeah.
It seems to me that after our negotiations, June 7th and 15th, we should say something about, and subsequently, because we've been back and forth for another month, really, from the 15th of June. Here we are, the 15th of July, right? So
All right.
just
We can
put a
add
tweak
that.
in there, put a tweak in
All
there.
right, Tweak.
Now, Exhibit 1 has been provided and can be pulled up at some, after we look at the letter, but we've had
Yes.
Beta look at that just to confirm that that's the appropriate set of lines, and they
Correct.
nodded their head, so that's okay.
It's based on Beta's initial.
Yeah,
2020.
but you never know, slip of the pen here or there, and you might have a mistake, so. What the hell was that? Second line, with the the old work, okay. Yeah, the old work. 80 group, yeah. Yep, if you post a new one, right? Yep. Exhibit 2, right, that's the draft language that you're referring to, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, after which the planning board will release the 3 current bonds. Can you scroll up a skosh there so we can, yeah. A little more, keep going. Okay. With the exception of the work, the planning board agrees that there are currently no outstanding punch list items and it has. That's true. Gary had raised a thought, but between Gary and the town planner, that was taken care of, so that's not an issue anymore. Where it says in number 6, see Norfolk DPW cost sheet attached as Exhibit 3, could you make that Exhibit 3? Because we've got Exhibit 1 and 2 earlier. And we can type Exhibit 3 across what Barry prepared for us.
Okay.
So. And not to be picky, but capitalize exhibit.
No prob.
Monthly basis, yep. Number 7, Now, you say, based on what you think, John, it's probably gonna be September before the folks can get in
I
there?
spoke with In Situ Form yesterday.
Yeah,
Their schedule right now is out till mid-September.
yeah,
They also have to order some of the 24-inch lining that they do not have in stock presently,
yeah,
and that's a 3 to 4 week lead time,
yeah, yeah.
which coincides with
Yeah,
their
yeah.
schedule.
Cross our
They
fingers.
may be able to get in earlier to do the initial cleaning and camera, because they'll go in before they start with the lining, and they will video the lines to make sure there's no obstructions or any of that.
Yeah,
And if there are, they'll jet the lines to clean them out.
yeah,
And that's typically prior to them showing up with the lining.
yeah, okay. Okay, so back up to 7, I think we were on, yeah. 10 to 12, so 10 to 12 months from let's say it's, it takes about 2 weeks, doesn't it?
To do the work?
Yeah.
The lining work is about a week.
About a week, okay.
Yeah.
But you gotta go in and clean out and,
Yes, so that's kind of pre-work
Yeah.
in my mind.
okay, so,
But the lining work takes about a week.
so Knockwood, by the end of September, you got it in hand.
Correct.
Okay, so 10, 8 to 10, is that what it- 10 to 12 months, so 10 months from the end of September would take you to the end of July, right?
Mhm.
That should be enough time to do number 8, 9, and 10, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, okay.
Going too quick.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I was reading faster than you.
Yeah, well, we were talking, that's trouble.
So we've got a placeholder for November in here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And if for some reason it's unsatisfactory, then you just pull the motion.
Sequentially, when we get to that point in the year, you know, the select board would have the hearing, not hearing, but meeting in October. And you would be reporting back to them at the, you know,
yeah, yeah,
in October.
right.
So maybe we gotta move around some meetings just to meet some sequences,
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And we got to alert Beta that they'll be required to
right, yeah,
take a look at these things.
to review it.
Yeah, okay.
But we can,
What I think may be appropriate when the time comes to minimally start is that Beta be present for a day or portions of a day when the work is actually going on,
Yeah,
so that they can see the process. I know they watched the old one.
yes,
I don't know if they have the same personnel or not. Obviously, anybody from the board or,
Yeah.
and possibly DPW, just so
Sure.
they get an idea of what is actually happening.
right, okay.
okay.
Yeah, good idea, all right. Can we make sure that happens?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay,
We'll obviously notify you.
Yeah.
When they give us a firm date, we'll
Yep.
try to give you as much notice as possible.
right.
Okay.
Okay, it looks good to me. Anybody got any issues with that? Okay.
Just a
Sure.
generic question. After everything was installed, and yes, maybe it was put down on top of ledge instead of some type of pack or whatever, the true cause is, which we don't see cars driving over the road and breaking the pipes. We have trucks go over the road, but they're not the heavy equipment that was there when the houses were still under construction. Is it the high-end equipment that
It-
was causing it to
It's
fail?
actually a mystery, I'll be
Okay.
honest. I think a lot of what you see happens in all concrete pipe.
Yep.
There is some damage that could have been heavy equipment. It could have been an installation issue. There's a lot of reasons it could happen. I would venture to say if you went into most any subdivision that has concrete pipe and pulled a camera through it, you would see similar things.
Yeah.
But I would like to say I could pinpoint an answer, but I cannot.
Okay.
There was certainly some questionable factors.
Yeah, we didn't see much deterioration.
My own opinion is that if there were going to be a major issue, it probably would have reared its head by now.
Yep.
A lot of that pipe has been in the ground for a long time.
Yep.
All right, thank you, John. I think we're ready
Good.
to
Sign it?
to sign this letter, on our end anyway, and do we need to wait for the clarification of bond language which is Exhibit 2 in order to pass this back to these fellas?
I don't think so. We have, what is it saying there?
And we have the draft, which they
We do have the
Right,
draft,
yeah, the draft
draft,
was-
and it says
so-
review and approval, doesn't it, of the bylaws?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that,
Yeah, it says Part B, 4B, right there. Which was provided to the planning board in the forest review and approval on June 16th, attached exhibit 3.
Review
So
and
that's the
approval.
draft, yeah.
no, I don't think you need it to sign this letter.
I don't think so either, but
No, we just need to make,
we'll
just
put the,
follow up and do
we'll
it.
put, that's right, we'll put the draft in there as exhibit 2, and
Right, and we
then we'll
need to
follow up later with.
follow up
Yeah,
with the,
okay, fair enough.
with the approval.
So we should be able to
Sign the letter.
sign the letter. Now, Mr. Peck will need to sign it, and unfortunately, he's not with us tonight because he's ill, but we'll figure out a way to get his signature on the letter.
Is there a duration on the bond letter? I'm just not recalling. The $100,000 bond letter, is there some duration associated with that as well?
This is- I thought it was a year, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just 1 year?
Yeah.
Okay.
After we.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you, not, Mr. Chairman, if you want, we could take him off the signature if you want to expedite.
No, I don't want to say.
All right, well, then we'll just wait to get him in. I know
Yeah.
he's ill, so I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could.
I mean, they,
If
We
the-
could get it over to his house and have him sign it even, if he's, as long as he isn't in bed.
He needs to review the meeting, though, doesn't he? Does he need to see this discussion, or it's not that important?
he might be home watching right now.
Well,
be.
Yeah,
Could
he
be.
is.
He's already got the letter.
He's
I mean,
been, yeah, he's been with us every step of the way here, so
Okay.
it's not anything that's brand new to him.
Okay.
So our job is to get that letter into your hands. Signed.
I think with the approval of the board,
Yep.
verbally, I think we can
Subsequent.
pull the trigger and get them scheduled and
All right, why don't we take a vote then?
Take a
to
vote,
satisfy our administrator over here, to formally approve this letter. So
So moved.
do we have a second to
Second?
the motion to formally, we do have a second. All right, Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Montfort,
Aye.
Mr. Weddleton. Chair votes aye. All right.
Does that
so-
work? Subsequently in there? Subsequent?
Oh, we just voted.
Measure is voting.
Oh, that's different now.
Is that sufficient wordsmithing, or?
I think so. What more do you want?
I'm asking you. You
Oh.
want it in the top, on the
Well,
second? at
you
the
were
end.
just saying that it was more than two specific meetings.
Yeah.
I
so
think that's all it was.
Subsequently, we,
Oh, I see, okay,
think it was-
7:15 and just, and subsequently,
and subsequently.
and subsequently,
There you go.
comma, after subsequently,
Another comma.
and we even,
Well, I think you were looking for more mention of the additional meetings, not necessarily the specific dates, but the fact that there were other additional
Yeah.
meetings.
right, there we go, right. So put them after subsequently, and I think we're good to go.
We're good.
The vote it is, on the letter.
The vote was taken,
Yep,
right?
and the letters. Good.
Yeah, good to
Yes.
go, right?
Excellent.
Good to go.
Just
All
wanna
right,
be
thank you,
sure.
Mr. Engel.
thank you very much.
All right.
Like checking the box.
Thank you,
Done.
John.
Okay,
Walter, I'll print this up before you leave and have you sign it.
yeah, all right. You will forgive me if I read it one more time.
You can read it as many times as you would like.
Okay. Discuss potential fall town meeting zoning changes.
Yeah, just quickly, I just forwarded to the board amendments to the floodplain bylaw. The reason why we're needing to take a look at it, FEMA has pushed out to all cities and towns throughout the country to take a look at their floodplain bylaws to make sure there's certain provisions in there from, to really to update them in terms of flood.
Yeah,
And so the Department of Conservation and Recreation, Division of Conservation and Recreation, who administers the flood program for the state, took a look at our bylaw. I provide you a draft. I need to go back through it with Bob Bullock as building commissioner, Janet as conservation agent, And so this is really just to start the process,
Yeah.
to get it done. There is floodplain map changes that are coming. We don't have them as of yet. They'll be done by the end of 2021. But we do need to have certain provisions in the zoning bylaw as it relates to floodplain. Where in the event if we did have some floodplain or storm damage, actually, really FEMA wants to see these languages in for reimbursement, so.
Okay.
So does it affect residents? So their house yesterday wasn't in floodplain and you make the changes and it is?
That would be more to the map side, but it really hasn't,
Okay.
as a whole, those changes to the map hasn't effectively done that.
Okay.
This is more the narrative piece of it.
So
in
let me be
terms of-
clear, what you gave us exists as our bylaw, and you're changing, is that right?
Yeah, what I did is I took the model bylaw that they have,
Oh,
the
so we
state.
don't have one, is what you're
No,
saying?
we do, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we do have a bylaw. I took the model bylaw and incorporated provisions of the model into our bylaw.
Okay, all right,
So it's kind of it is a blended version of it.
yeah, all right. What you added was in bold, though, right?
Yeah.
So the existing bylaw is in standard print?
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Yep, all right.
And so the goal would be to put this on the fall town meeting, so we're done.
Yep.
And then in the spring, all we have to do is just update the bylaw in terms of the new map that comes out, because we're referencing the 2012 floodplain right now.
All right, okay, now the other item was home rental.
Yeah, so the other item was in relation to a complaint that was received where some folks in town are taking their home to Airbnb or other.
There's a draw?
Huh?
There's a draw for North
Yeah,
Airbnb?
yeah, believe it or not, there is. Did Pete, not Pete, I did go on Airbnb, said I want to rent a home in Norfolk, and there are more than one.
Okay.
But presently on the bylaw, we don't have any provisions in terms of somebody renting their home, whether it's short-term, long-term. So I bring it to the board's attention in terms of if it's something that we might want to consider addressing. Some towns have adopted, I'll call it short-term rental provisions. I did receive one. I put a general broadcast out to other towns.
Yeah.
I did receive one from Lexington, and actually they adopted some provisions for short-term rental.
They restrict short-term, like 1 and 2 days?
It's more, actually, they're allowing it. It's just, there's certain regulations they have to follow and register and so forth.
Really?
Yeah, they weren't necessarily banning it. It's just
Yeah,
regulating
yeah.
it, so.
Any
Okay.
proposed revenue stream with that as well, from a tax perspective, or no?
I guess I don't know how that works with Airbnb.
And are you asking us if we agree with it, if we want to put, who's
I'm asking you whether it
pushing
requires
for it?
Well, I'm not really pushing. I'm bringing it to your attention
All right.
whether you feel it rises to the level of something that needs to be addressed or not.
It's kind of Big Brother.
Yeah, I think people should be able to do certain things with their property without the influence of the town.
Well, I'm fundamentally there too, Gary. On the other hand, if you get half a dozen of these regulations from other towns, I'd like to read them and see what's in them.
Yeah, if we could determine what the impact might be, is there something we're overlooking, but I just don't
Yeah.
Well, I think
see
in
it.
some instances they'd probably become nuisances, probably to.
Yeah.
And certainly,
To
probably.
your point, the Foxborough concert, football-going crowd, you might get a little bit of a louder individual at one of
Yeah.
these properties that
Yeah.
could cause some noise issues, but that's really a matter for the police to deal with, and for the homeowner and the company to resolve.
It is. No, definitely a lot of those issues are policing issues, but I will forward you what I got from Lexington, at least so far, and you could take a look at it
Yeah,
and see.
sure.
I mean, it's.
Okay, good.
Can I, so are you putting together a list of things we might propose at the next town meeting?
That was it.
Okay.
That's the list.
So something that this board had discussed previously, Erin brought it up after a long discussion, it could have been related to Norway Farms at the time, was around our cost, and maybe it's a Sue Jacobson discussion as well, around our cost to buy out of building an affordable unit. And I don't know if that cost was like $350,000. And I remember Aaron one night saying, well, everybody's going to just pay the money. That's the easier thing to do because you're going to get more by building the unit and selling it. So it seemed like you could still make money by giving the town the check. So I didn't know if we wanted to, we talked about revisiting that, and then we didn't want to do it this time because of all the B1 changes. Do you remember any of this, or maybe I'm...
Well,
I remember that.
I don't remember what I had for breakfast, so, I mean, it's okay for you to bring it
I
up.
do have a response.
Yeah?
You want? Sure.
Go ahead.
So we are about to put a request for proposal out to update the housing production plan.
Yep.
So I would just suggest that we, once we dive into the housing production plan, that we discuss that as a topic when we look at it, which then in turn might generate some recommendations to make changes to it.
Yeah.
Similar to what happened last time,
Okay.
went through that process and we made some changes. So
Yep.
I would just
Yeah.
let that process go forward, and some things may come out which may end up turning out for the spring of 2022.
Even tonight, I thought that was almost the mitigation around the 7 Hill Street, because
I still think the issues that came up about that, the bylaw changes that went in as a petition this past spring, I still would like to look deeper into when we get into the housing production plan. I still have concerns about the cause and effect of those changes that were adopted, if they get approved by the Attorney General, of maybe creating a negative effect in terms of
Development.
development, in terms of creating 40B projects as opposed to, which I think they were trying to do. I think the goal was, right, to have affordable as something that comes to the planning board, which I think could have the secondary effect of saying, you know what, it's not economical and we're going the other way.
the goal, I think, was to close the gap between our requirements to become compliant with affordable. I think because in any development, we keep losing ground. Year
However,
after year, we're losing ground.
I do understand that point. However, it's a matter of being meaningful to do that and not go too far where you...
Maybe
push
the
it
extreme was
the
too
other way.
high, yes.
Right. So
Okay.
that's why I really do want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
That old bylaw that
Yeah.
didn't give a time date, that really murks things up for Hill Street. Because if you're under the bylaw and there's no date, and he has a couple of extensions with us over 2 years, and we say nothing, in theory, he's got whatever time he wants to do that affordable unit. So that really, in my respect, that changes things, because that was the written bylaw. There was no time date.
Yeah.
So technically, that could be going on till the day he starts construction. That really throws Peter Mello's, in my opinion, that throws a little wrench into that, because who's to say they weren't following that first bylaw? I can't say that because there's no date.
Well, let's
And
just
the
stay
project
away
wasn't-
from
Yeah.
Let's
stay
move
away
off
from that
of
in
that
terms
topic
of
for
the
now.
specific. I just
No,
want.
I understand. I'm
I
just saying, I didn't know
But
that, but
On
that
an
makes
unrelated
it,
topic,
that makes
we
it
did bring
murky.
up the idea of discussing or reviewing the on-highway, off-highway division of
Yeah, we did.
the
We
C1
did.
district. And
Yeah.
whether or not we're gonna go through with the rezoning.
I mean, like an executive decision, if you don't mind, I'll kind of defer in terms of that. Not for the fall, because we got a bunch of other things
Okay.
you're going to be having you work on. So I'm going to have your plate a little bit full.
Okay.
Okay.
Gonna be nervous?
Moving along. 35 Pine Street,
You might want to be nervous. No, I'm
40
just kidding.
40B project sidewalk discussion.
Yeah, so if you don't mind pulling it up. So I do want to,
This was the one that came to us, asked us for A&R approval, and we made a couple recommendations, and one of those was the sidewalk.
slightly. The Pine Street's before the zoning board deals for a comprehensive permit.
40B.
And as a 40B. So they did talk to you about this. So originally the request was not to do sidewalk at all. The end result, at least the recommendation of the planning board, is we want at least one sidewalk. The concern from the applicant's standpoint was that it's tight site, and then adding a sidewalk with a street that really kind of creates a lot of impervious surface. So
This is going to be a private way, is that right?
it would could have a negative effect on trying to sell the development. So what was offered as a compromise to kind of bridge the two things was to put in a walkway, which was with a turf stone, so basically, you know, can you?
Yep, hold on
so-
1 second.
That's who'll put it up on the screen,
I wasn't
but,
sure
Turf
what
stone
you-
similar to what we have at the Pond Street Recreation Facility in some areas?
I don't know
Just
if
like
they
crushed
have.
stone or?
No, so it's a
Oh, those
it's a mason.
blocks, those paver blocks.
The paver blocks, and
Got
then there you go. If you look at that,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
probably a good picture of it as a compromise. So the ZBA referred it to the planning board for your commentary. So a couple things. One, I rewatched the video from the May 19th ZBA meeting, and my sense was that they were amenable to this as an option to
Is there
consider.
grass in between the pavers?
There's grass in between
So how do you plow it?
with a snow blower.
Ooh, good luck.
So you have to. So what you have to do is you
So
put the
this would
stopper.
be for the roadway?
No, this is just a sidewalk.
Okay,
This
this is
is,
the
I think,
sidewalk.
for,
That's
that's a driveway.
That's a driveway in this example,
Yeah, I
but,
just
but
wanted to know what they were pitching.
yeah.
There was another drawing that came in with.
Can you put up the other
Sure.
pictures? It's
Can you mow my sidewalk?
So-
The other drawing will show it to you more.
yeah. I'll show you.
Yeah, yeah.
And a few key points though, very important.
Oh, this one.
In terms of this is going to be a private road, private side. So this is all private. It's not public. In terms of we're not he's not gonna be turning this over to the town of Norfolk.
So they're taking care of their own street.
They have association take care of all this. I think.
Yeah, there it is, there's an example.
That's a little bit. So that's a little closer picture of what
And so that'll just be a section of one side?
one side. Yeah.
Okay, did they propose a side?
Yeah, it's on the not on the side that you originally wanted. I know.
The right side would have been
Yeah,
ideal.
it's on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, the-
But it's also on the other side because the bus stop is going to be on the other side.
In that little
Yeah.
emergency
Yeah.
area?
In the no, up front on Pine Street,
Okay.
right up to the
I can
front.
see that looking pretty lousy in a few years.
well,
I was gonna say, this looks fine for the first month.
Oh, my
Right.
God.
the thing that bugs me about it is when it rains, that grass gets pretty darn slippery.
Right, you're right. It's a
If
good point.
you're walking on it, kids
point.
walking on it, bang.
I mean, winter as well. I mean, you're not gonna get all the
The problem-
ice and snow off of the
Yeah.
paver area.
Problem was the percent impervious surface?
No, it wasn't a problem.
It wasn't a problem.
It wasn't a problem in that sense. It was a problem because it was too much. It was too tight, so they wanted to have some to break up the.
But isn't this taking up the same amount of space?
It is, but it is softer in
green.
appearance because the sidewalk.
It just seems like it's taking up the same amount of space when it's
It
just
is
the
taking the
sidewalk.
same. It is taking the
Are
same.
they, is it because they were going by the standard side we proposed? with
Correct,
The greenway
yeah.
and the side? I mean,
Yeah, so they didn't want to. Well, so first, let me step back. The original intent was to have no sidewalk because they
Right.
felt like it's 8 units, it's a small little street, nobody's going to walk on the sidewalk. But the prevailing thought, at least, I think when it was before you, we talked about it before, is like, hey, we want to have should be at least one sidewalk. So as a compromise, he came back with this. Hey, I think this would look a little bit better than an asphalt sidewalk and then a paved road. So that was the compromise to do something.
How much of those,
This is actually more expensive than
I bet Trent Dooley has a walk like that.
yeah.
How far were those houses set back from the street? 25 feet?
A little bit, yeah, around there. It was,
So my point was, if you put in a 5-foot grass strip and a 5-foot sidewalk, you're 15 feet from the.
Right, I
That
thought
looks
we would,
pretty. That looks pretty lousy as far as selling these things.
Yeah.
Who wants to be 15 feet?
I completely get that, but
right.
I thought the idea would be to remove that grass strip.
They could do that, so then
Right.
it's 20 feet, which is pretty minimal. That's
so the
problem.
concern by doing that
Right.
is now people might start to park on it too, because it's right, because
Right.
it is going to be a monolithic berm,
Right.
so it's not a curb. So you end up
point.
and I will say this,
Right.
people they could end up parking on the sidewalk, so now you got people in the street. So again, it's not a perfect solution in terms of that.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, the intent was, just to have a safe path for
Yeah,
children
safe
who
path.
were walking or
Right.
biking, keep them
So-
off the street.
so this is, I mean, it's
different.
It's different. It might work fine, and we might find that it works great.
It doesn't
To
have
me,
It doesn't have my
I don't
vote.
like it for the
Huh?
safety point of
It
view.
doesn't have my vote.
What?
It's,
Doesn't have my vote.
Doesn't have my vote either.
Well, if you don't have a negative recommendation, I guess that's important.
We don't
I got a
have a,
negative, I got a negative
You do
recommendation.
have a negative
Oh,
recommendation.
yeah.
On this,
I thought it was pretty negative, yes.
And maintenance.
So then what is you want to see it paved?
No, put bricks in.
No, Brits are
Bricks?
even worse, especially over time. Have you seen Boston?
For the
DRB doesn't have any commentary on this, so we don't have a
Let me ask
member
you,
anymore.
since we don't plow sidewalks in the winter anyway, what's wrong with 4 houses, which is 400 feet, they walk along the front yards when they're walking to the end? Because when you get to the end, there's no sidewalks anyway, right? I mean, we're
Well,
going to-
there is sidewalk at the end, isn't there?
Not on
One
Valley.
Sidewalk, Pine Street,
Yeah, not in Valley though.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, you know.
I mean, we could also look at this as an experiment. You know, see
Right,
what happens
right.
and
It would
if
be
it's
experiment.
something
I have
that's
8,000
amenable.
feet of sidewalk in my neighborhood, and I will guarantee you the people walk either, well, they walk in the street. They don't walk in the
Yeah.
side, they
Yeah.
walk in the street. And the dogs go on the grass strip. So it's very convenient.
You know,
True
not
story,
to,
that's
yeah,
how
you
people
know
are.
what, I mean, the sad thing is, unfortunately, I think people probably gonna walk the street, you know, it's like, 'cause
Well,
it's so,
anyway,
but,
My
but your vote is no.
Because of the safety, I consider it a safety hazard. That grass is gonna get wet, even if it's kept mowed like that, somebody's gonna step on it, bang.
And who's gonna cut it?
You know, that's an issue, but.
The homeowners association is gonna have to, they're gonna-
Oh, yeah, we can count on that.
Oh. it's on them.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving
I don't know,
along,
really, you think?
moving along.
So
I
then,
say, we
so what is it, wait, I'm sorry, I don't need to, so what is your, so no for that?
For me, well, I don't know,
Hard no.
what do you think, Gary?
Or no?
I got a hot
I
no.
wish there were other alternatives. Is that a polite way of saying it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen this done in other areas, and the grass dies. It becomes dust. There's no good way of replanting unless you're like literally replacing the soil and putting in new
Right.
turf in there.
So let me take the far end extreme to it, I guess. If there was no sidewalk, would you rather see no sidewalk than, I mean, do you understand, I guess, the competing,
How about getting 2 foot by 1 foot bluestone stepping stones? And line those along the front yard, all right, and let the grass grow between them. So now people use for front walks.
Yeah.
Rather than having a whole big hardscape. At least it gives you something to walk on. It's not gonna be plowed.
I don't know that the issue so much is walking on it as much as like, you know, just a place for kids to be and be safe on something that's neutral
gotta be in
and
the
not
street.
necessarily owned by someone.
On the
This
sidewalk?
still gives an impression of ownership to the person whose house this is in front of. The sidewalk's like that neutral hanging out area or play area where.
In this case, still hang out in the cul-de-sac.
Right. Well, safe transition to it. You know, that was my goal. I don't think we're gonna meet that with this.
No, I
We have
agree.
no
I
say
think, you know,
anyway, so
yeah.
it'll be whatever
Right.
it is.
I appreciate them offering an opportunity to,
Yeah.
you know, provide this.
I
but
like his idea.
all right, well, I can
Yeah.
I
throw
don't
it
like
out
that
there.
one.
You know?
You don't like that one?
No. I've got tons of bluestone. It starts chipping. It's annoying.
You got it cheap.
All right.
It came with the house. Come on.
So maybe the ZBA is on their own then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't say any precedence, so I mean, it's
We
their,
pull our recommendation.
you know,
Yeah, you're getting a mixed review.
yeah.
That's
So
the
probably,
that's the kind of set.
all right,
I
I'll
can-
synopsis your recommendation or your thoughts next week then.
Moving along.
All
Vote to release Lot 2 Briarwood Road from 1984 Covenant Definitive Subdivision Plan for Fox Hill Estates. Give us the background on that again, if you would, sir.
Well, after, I think there's probably 3 or 4 people that bought and sold this house on the title exam, somebody found out that the covenant, it wasn't released from the covenant, so they've asked the board to sign the covenant. I mean, it should have been released.
Okay, so give us the proper language we should put in the motion.
So I think if you actually make a motion based upon what I have written on the agenda, that might actually work.
Okay, so,
I have the form here.
So I can motion to vote to release Lot 2 at 3 Briarwood Road from 1984 Covenant Definitive Subdivision Plan, Rocks Hill Estates.
do we have a second?
Second.
It's actually Fox, technically, sorry.
Is it?
Not
No, it's
rocks?
rocks.
Is it Rocks?
It's rocks.
I thought you told me it was, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Rocks Hill
Rocks
Estate.
Hill Estates.
Okay.
I know.
All right,
That's
I
what-
know.
Sure, well,
I take back my comment.
That's all right.
that's what Chris said, we just misheard him, that's all. Okay, we have a motion, and it's
it
been
was second.
seconded on the
Yep.
table. Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Montfort,
Aye.
Mr. Whittleton.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, we took care of that one. Discuss structure requirements prior to release of lots. Now, this comes from John saying that, you know, he could when he gets a minute, he'll give us a list of things that we should insist that a developer accomplish prior to releasing a lot for the developer to begin construction of his development. And his desire to create that list comes from the frustration that the board has had time and again, where a developer doesn't do what he's supposed to do in the sequence he's supposed to do it. We find ourselves chasing them later to get it done. So when you get a minute, we'd love to entertain.
And the one overriding principle is your control is in the lots. Once you release the lots, it becomes a chasing game. So basically, until all of the infrastructure is totally done, you know, stone walls, expensive stuff, until the roadway, the base coat has got an as-built. Makes no sense to do an as-built on the road that's done. Now if you're gonna move it, you gotta move everything. So before somebody starts to move along and get permits, right now our bylaws say the drainage has to be in and working. So if an as-built, we do as-bills when the road is first paved, then we know it's right and don't have to move it with the finished coat. That should be done initially, then there's no problem with the thing being on private property or something like that. But you have to really weigh that too, with not overwhelming a guy that's starting off with a, say, a 20-lot subdivision, looking for cash flow to get the first few lots going, right, without having them all do all this mega infrastructure work to get it going. So I think there's a happy medium, so we can get his lots to get going, but before he gets to a certain point, the infrastructure should be done, and definitely the as-built should be done to make sure everything's in the right spot, and the drainage is all working properly. And then that eliminates most of the problems that will come up down the road. And then we throw in the trees and all that, probably before we release the last two lots, because the majority of the site work would be done. So just something like that.
And the
to ensure-
fees, right?
Right,
The
right. So at the end, you're
$2,000
not
per lot.
stuck looking for someone to build a $100,000 wall, right, when the lots have all been released.
Yeah, it always seems like we're chasing money. They're playing.
Right. And what we learned is
with our
the main
money.
control on everything, mainly Bristol Pond, when we pull that lot, really, that controls everything.
Yeah.
And that's where the real money is. So along with the bond, we're doubly protected, because these bonds, they're really not factual, because some of the pricing in the bonds really don't work. They use mass specs or something. In the real world, a private developer, it costs a lot more. It really does. I mean, I've got a paving allowance. I'm gonna be paving a road. That's less than half of what it's gonna cost me to pave. I hope the DPW is not listening, but, so the extra lot just gives you extra protection.
Yeah.
So that's really what the person, the developer is gonna be anxious to done.
The other way we've been caught, aside from trusting people about the $2,000 that ran into $26,000, was the time value of money. Some of the developments have taken so long that the bond may have been fine, or the money may have been fine that we're holding 10 years ago, and now we're building the last house, and it's only, the value's 50%. It takes to finish
Years
the
ago, Gary,
development.
we used to do the bond estimates every 2 years, just to make sure they were current. And you certainly want to renew it before all the lots are all
Yeah.
released, you know, because, depending on the inflation, if you had a bond from 3 years ago, the prices right now are prohibitive compared to 3 years ago. So really, all of those bonds would be shot.
Okay, so what's the best way, John, for us to get that on paper?
I get step by step on what should be done and when,
Okay,
easily.
all right, can you write it up?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
I can.
We appreciate that. Super. All right, let's see where we are here. Town planner updates. Housing Choice Grant, next steps, Norfolk Town Center wastewater master plan. Sir.
So just quickly, I did forward you the draft of the report. I put it up on the town website. We'll just push it out to the main page for people to take a look at it. What I'd like to do is think about a time when we could have the consultants in and we can, go through the report, make some edits to it, because it's in draft form.
That's a
right?
good idea, in
So-
person.
Yeah, in person.
Yeah.
So maybe, think about a time, maybe in August, maybe early September, something along that line. And so we can close it
Do you want
out.
to do it at a regular planning board meeting or at a special meeting?
You can, maybe, I don't know, I suppose it depends on the agenda. Like, the 17th is pretty heavy already, right?
Yeah, it depends on the agenda, that's right.
Yeah. I would think maybe just for this topic.
Let's try and shoot for September agenda if it works.
Yeah,
if it
Not,
doesn't,
then we'll just set up a special
I
meeting the
think
same
that's,
month.
yeah,
good.
so we can shoot for whatever the September meeting is.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Chris, okay.
And that's,
All right, let's see,
okay.
any other updates, Doctor?
No, probably, I'll defer my Southwood update to somebody else that's in the audience.
Oh, is that paging me?
That's, yes, that's you.
Thank you. I'm fine. Very independent. Yep, I'll slither in here. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Elizabeth Whitney, 26 Valley Street, Bonneville, and I'm happy to be here representing the neighbors of the Southwood Group, otherwise known as the PIP Group. And we look forward to the process as we work together toward achieving no significant risk at the Southwood site, 111 Dedham Street, Norfolk. So I have a progress update to share with the board, probably about 5 minutes worth. The PIP group submitted comments on July 2nd to the licensed site professional, Mr. Bird, to the new owners, as well as to the Department of Environmental Protection. The DEP has posted this under the main RTN, or release tracking number, for 111 Dedham Street as a public comment. As you know, copies were sent to various town boards, including the planning board. There are several major issues that I'd like to report, which include the following. Has the new buyer done their due diligence on past site history? Has the site been fully and appropriately characterized or identified and described under the Massachusetts contingency plan? And what is the new owner's plan to conduct and complete a thorough assessment? The PIP group, through our own due diligence, has identified areas of former buildings that have never been assessed, documented the acquisition and use of radium on the site. A complete lack of documentation regarding the disposal of radium used at this site. And none of the previous environmental reports over the past 30 years have mentioned this, the disposal of radium used at the site. Pondville Cancer Hospital started business in 1926, and cancer research and treatment was on the cutting edge. Pondville had a wonderful reputation, but it was all new way back then. The PIP group strongly urges not only the planning board, but all town boards to understand the uncertainty and the unknowns on this property before any review that falls under their jurisdiction is started. We, the PIP petitioners, feel strongly that assessment and characterization leading to remediation must be first, the first priority, remediation. Now that the public comment period is complete, the final public involvement plan from the LSP is due within 30 days or August 2nd. And additional review may be needed. Please do note that there are more questions and other information that has been uncovered that will need to be addressed at some point. So, that's my update, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to share information from the PIP group at planning board meetings. So I thank you from the neighbors of Southwood at 111 Dedham Street, PIP petitioners group. Now, our next meeting is on the 19th. That's only 4 days from now. And I'm not an expert. I can convey questions, or I can try to answer some. I am not an authority.
Well, one question, you've raised to the LSP a couple of issues. Hey, there's some buildings that weren't looked at. Hey,
Yes.
what about radium disposition? So has the LSP acknowledged receipt of that and is acknowledged that they need to do something about those those multiple
I
issues?
believe that we have received a response. It was a very lengthy letter. They are very well aware of our concerns. Mr. Byrd, we have his attention.
Good.
Yes, we have his attention, indeed. And I've been studying the mass contingency plan. It is quite interesting.
Excuse me, I have a meeting, I gotta go, but.
Oh, thank you.
See everybody later.
Thank you,
Take care,
John.
Hey, John, thank you.
Bye-bye, good to see you. The abbreviations, did you find this, Rich? It was incredible to learn all those different abbreviations used in reports.
Yeah.
I have a list, and I'm constantly referring to it. But anyway, mass contingency plan says it. A set of regulations under Chapter 21E, you know this. The MCP creates the program for required assessment, risk assessment, and remediation of oil and hazardous materials and contamination. And I just got this morning about a, 11 or 12-page document describing in detail the mass contingency plan.
Yeah.
We do have Mr. Byrd's attention. We do have the attention of the Department of Environmental Protection. We have done, in no uncertain terms, our homework. We've shared, investigating, we have read. We took turns studying, looking for information, reading it, getting together, sharing, cross-sharing, and we have had several Zoom meetings with Mr. Byrd and Jennifer, I can't remember her last name. They take us seriously. Would you agree, Rich?
I would agree.
Absolutely. And I'm quite proud of this PIP group because we're doing things correctly. And we are recognized by the state of Massachusetts. So we're doing it well. And all we want, no significant risk. And
Well,
we live near.
I think you're doing a good service for the town, so
Absolutely.
I thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. for
We're
that.
in it really for the long haul.
Yeah.
Oh, God, there you are, all by yourself in the audience now. Yeah. We're in it for the long haul. And so that's why I wanted to have either me or Rich or a member of the PIP group give updates, select board meetings, select board, yes,
Yeah.
I was gonna say selectmen. Planning board and, what was the other one?
Board of Health.
Board of, no, we don't, we haven't reported on a regular basis to the Board of
Conservation,
Health.
maybe?
Well, we'll tell anybody our stuff. We're more than happy.
Yep.
But, and this group of people, so many of us didn't know each other before. Even some members who live in Norfolk, but some members who live in Walpole. It's quite a testimony, as I think it indicates that it's a good thing that we're doing. I do. I think it's a good thing.
Well, it is. I think
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one never stops learning. So thank you. I do talk a lot. If I have
No,
notes.
thank you.
I
appreciate your love for the neighborhood.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you. And if anybody ever wants a book about Pondville, I have a million of them. My publisher practically gives them to me because he knows that I say, here, you want one, you know? So,
I would love one.
oh, I will
Absolutely.
absolutely get one to you. Yes, very, very soon.
Yes, bring him to the board, and I'm sure each of us would love to have. I'd
Oh, I
like to
would
have
be,
one.
in fact, I just had my publisher whip up, the book is about, it's almost 300 pages. Barbara,
For 300 pages, that's a gift, I think.
uh,
You gotta do your training again, you can't say.
I might return it.
As
all
long as
the
it's not more than
effort,
worth more.
training.
Less than
How much does it
$50.
cost?
No, or 300 pages.
And I
I'm
will
telling
tell you that, and I had to take that lovely training. I can't tell you how much I love taking that training. No, actually, my publisher, knowing that I say, here, I want you to learn. Nobody ever talked about Pondville years and years ago. We were way out there. My book is very, very cheap. It would be fine, so I am so happy. But Barbara Bartholomew said to me, I'm on the Historical Commission, and she said, Betsy, nobody ever writes much about Pondville. Would you write a book? You probably won't find much information. Well, I got almost 300 pages, and we have, I think, 204 photographs, tables, that, and 21 chapters plus introduction and so forth. I have to say, I really love the book myself. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you so much.
Okay, do we have any other business this evening? I don't think so.
Training?
Yeah, we're
What?
looking to, as far as the master plan training, to get
Oh, yeah, okay, go
something
ahead.
scheduled hopefully the end of August.
You were proposing the 22nd, was that right?
Well, you're
Well,
gonna,
that was next week, but
you're gonna push it
Okay.
into September is
Okay.
what I heard,
That's right.
right?
I'm looking for the end of August, September, October. Ideally, want to have the training so that we could get into the master plan. in,
August, okay,
Thanks,
yeah,
Betsy.
February, March of next year.
okay, yep, got it. All right, so, with that, Chair,
Make a motion to adjourn.
will entertain a mo- Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Mr. Searle?
Aye.
Mr. Montfort?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, we are adjourned, thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
It's good to